morning all. So I'm just going to tell you about everything that happened week commencing the 4th of March. So 4th of March we put on an advert onto Indeed for a content writer. That's been, well, it's been really well responded to. That crazily, I mean, it's only a content executive, I think really actually, rather than content writer, and we've probably had since during that week about maybe 55, I would say 55 applications. Some of them, ridiculously overqualified, so I'm not quite sure what that means. Possibly that there aren't enough jobs that are out there for that, or that the people who are doing that jobs have got themselves convinced that the job is worth more than it is. I don't know, but anyway, I think we actually don't need 55 people. We only need one. So providing we can get one of these 55 to fit the bill, then happy days. So that's something that we've got an interview booked. I think it's for Thursday this week, I think. So onwards going about thinking about kind of wits end and moving. It's crazy. I really am drilling down into the detail of wits end and thinking. It's bad because I will always think of, what are the problems, but also what are the problems and what would I do to solve them. So the latest nutty one is the bedroom ceiling in the master bedroom is a vaulted, really pretty, a vaulted ceiling with like beams at the top, but it's really high. And I was thinking to myself, well, okay, so what happens in the summer when you get some kind of a fly or a gnat in, and flies and gnats, obviously they always go to the ceiling or stuff like that. And I'm thinking, how are you supposed to, how on earth am I supposed to get that down from the ceiling? How would or if there was a spider on the ceiling, God forbid, and I needed to, I would normally catch it with a cup and then put a piece of cardboard over it and then release said spider back into the wild. And I don't know what the answer is for that. Not a clue. I think again, it's just one of those things where life, if the move does go through, life is just going to be different there. Just going to have to adapt and roll with it. And some of the things that I just take for granted here as being normal, when you move, then that will become your new normal, and you'll just adapt and just get used to it. And yeah, if there's a bee buzzing around in the eaves of the bedroom, then I'm just gonna have to live with it until it comes down to a window, and then try and capture it, I suppose. On Monday, crumbs. So obviously we'd had a viewing on, was it the Saturday or the Sunday of that last week? I think it was, by the Bat family, and they were supposed to ring back. I think it must have been the Sunday. They were supposed to be ringing back in the morning. That's right. They were supposed to be ringing back with an offer, and they didn't. They hadn't come through with it in the morning. I was like, right, okay, so what does this mean? I am constantly over-analysing all these offers and trying to understand the psyche of people who are making the offers. And yeah, there wasn't an offer in the morning, so we rang the estate agents up and asked them if what the situation of it was. And they then rang back a little bit later on, and the house which is up for 495, they thought that they did want to make an offer, and they would offer 445,000, or like 10% below the asking price. I was like, well, what? Obviously for us the answer is no, because we have a figure that we're set on, that we need to get to make all the numbers work to make the deal go through. But it just puzzles me. I mean, this is a family who are in rented accommodation, and I think the psyche must be, well, if they're in rented accommodation, then therefore that gives them the whip hand, because they're in theory the ideal people you want to buy, because they've got no chain below them, and of course we're quite lucky because there'd be no chain above us as well. So initially I did think that that was the reason why they were just trying to use that as leverage, which is never going to work at all. I mean, if anything, it's had probably the completely opposite effect on me, to the point where I'm thinking, okay, well, we should say office in excess of, or something like that. I don't think you can't use the phrase minimum, or it has to be. It's not like with a car where I put on nearest offer or something along those lines. But I certainly don't. I would rather, unless they're serious about paying the asking price or near to the asking price, then effectively I wouldn't want for them to come round, or anybody to come round and even view the house, unless they're deadly serious. Because the amount of stress that it puts certainly myself through, and then the pair of us through as a couple, when I'm like, this hasn't been tidied here, or you need to do this, or you need to do that, and it really is. It's just not. I don't know, it just feels like every time there's a viewing, it's almost as if it's a personal examination. So yeah, not happy with that. Monday last week, I think, started us watching our latest box set as a family. So we started watching Man of the High Tower, and I think it was pretty good. Although I have to say that I did fall asleep. I think it's because if the thing that we're watching's got a lot of action into it, then there's more chance. But if there are long periods of dialogue with anything, when I hit that kind of like 10 o'clock, it seems to be when I go through must be body rhythm or something along those lines. When I get to 10 o'clock, that's when I start to obviously relax, and that's when I'm pretty much ready for sleeping. So I did fall asleep for a little bit of a nap, and I do feel like that I've usually got Brodie on one side of me and Wendell on the other, and both of them keep nodding round and just checking to see whether I'm going to sleep, especially if I go further back in the chair and can rest my head on the back of the chair, then I will tend to fall asleep. Just one of those things of being old, I suppose, or older, or getting older. Tuesday, Wend had a health check for life insurance for the next mortgage, because I think we're going to have to look at or there's different kinds of life insurance. You can have these ones where obviously just pay out if you die, and you can also have these ones that pay out if you've got critical illness, I think is what it is. So that's if you've got, I don't know, you get a cancer or something along those lines. I would imagine there's probably quite a big list of exclusions on it, but I think the guy said you're 15 times more likely to claim on a critical illness cover than you are if you're claiming on life. So critical illness could be, let's say, a disease that, I haven't looked at the list, but I would imagine it's something like dementia or something like that, where you may not be able to work and therefore earn. And so how would you pay the mortgage, that kind of thing. So I think obviously we're in a slightly unusual situation where we'd be using providing the businesses in a healthy state, that we'd be using the revenue or whatever revenue that comes from that, or rental of the outbuildings to pay the mortgage going on in the long term. So I think it's more of a comfort thing that if you are if you do get a death sentence on you, or an imminent one, I mean everybody's going to die at some point or other, but if you do get like an imminent one, then at least you know that there's your mortgage is paid off, and I think you can choose for what kind of, depending on how much you pay, you can get a lump sum. I think it's either like something like 50 or 100 grand, and then I would imagine that's what you use then for probably partying. I would imagine going around the world like some kind of world tour before you die, I suppose. I don't know. Anyway, well, hopefully it wouldn't come to that, but we'll see how that goes. I had talked to Wen following the offer that we had the day before being 50 grand under. We asked the estate agent whether we should put offers in excess of, and then they suggested that really that they should manage that process, and that if we put offers in excess of, then when people read that, they might think, okay, well, it's up for, okay, let's say for easy reckoning figures, 500,000, and they may think, okay, well, we need to come up with 510 or 520 or something like that, a much higher figure, where in reality what people want you to do is just you just meet the asking price, and they're not really interested in being bartered down. That they don't want people to be bartering down any further than that. Hence the same thing with Wits End. So that was in offers in excess of £1 million, and the estate agent said, no, look, literally what they just want to do is if you offer £1 million, then the likelihood is they're going to accept your offer, which transpired to be correct, of course. Still back at work, still working on we're doing a social video at the moment for a physio, for a lady who's got a physiotherapy business. So I used the same, looked at the videos, and it was a landscape format one, and then it's really been drummed into me is to look at what's the main formats that are being played on the platform that you're watching at the time. So because we're going to be advertising it on Facebook, putting it on there, we had a landscape video which does look great, and I just had to say, go through, looked at how the subtitles were done on it as well, which at the moment it almost looks like maybe not Star Wars, but you've literally got the words going up and more words coming along, and it's kind of like putting the words growing as it's going along. So what I did was spent a bit of time, actually downloaded Facebook onto my phone for the first time, just to see how how ads and how other people treat that kind of attempt, because when the ads play through on Facebook, they don't automatically come on with any music or sound. Went through and always stop and look at the ones that have come from VaynerMedia or Gary Vee. He was always say in all his podcasts, he always says, watch, don't do what I say, watch what I do. So I looked at some of the ones on there and how he does the subtitling. It tends to be a whole 2 lines of a part of a sentence that will then come on, and then the next 2 sentences come on, or the next 2 lines come on, and that's how you read it. And to be fair, I think that makes a lot of sense for me, because your brain doesn't actually read each letter as it's going to. It's looking for the patterns of letters to recognise the words, and that's how that's how your brain reads. So that needed to be reworked. Looked also at the landscape video when we're putting it on as a long format. I think we're putting it on YouTube as well. So I was looking at the framing on that, and so there was a piece to camera similar to this kind of thing, and then it was like a big blank wall. So it's like, can we add the branding to what looks good as a holding device for the logo in terms of its shape. So that's been redone, or that's been left that to be redone. On Tuesday we also got called to a meeting with the business centre manager, and she didn't really go into details as to what that was about the day before. So it's like, well, if you give us some kind of an indication, then we've got some way of preparing for it. So I was like, well, what could it be? Likely, if she's sitting down, if she wants to talk to us, then it's likely to be a complaint. What things have we done wrong? Didn't really know. So anyway, we got up there, and it turns out that where we are in the ground floor, there's another company that has an office either side. So we have like a shared entrance, if you want to call it that, and they were like saying that we hadn't locked the doors and that we were blocking fire exit, which when the Costa promotion was going out. And what we did was we just wanted to just have it nearer to the door so it was ready to load up for the vans, and they were saying it was blocking fire exits, and I was like, no, it wasn't at all. And the crazy thing is, we'd actually spoken to them and gone, oh, is it all right if we just leave the things out here? And they said, oh yeah, fine. And then, if they've got a problem, and surely you'd like to think that they would go, well, we prefer it if you didn't leave it out there. Is there no room that they could have voiced their concerns, but obviously it's just one of those things where people say one thing to your face, and then say one thing to other people. So that's like a little bit frustrating, but that's fine. It just kind of underlines that we do need to be looking to move, and that having any kind of neighbours who have any kind of say on what you're doing, has its frustrations, can leave you wound up. So we also had some good news about a potential rebranding of a further 8 sites for M&S through SSP, which is good. Some of the sites I'm not quite sure about, because I actually did them in the first place, and so they're already master branded. So while we're looking to rebrand a site that's already been that's already the correct brand, I'm not quite sure on that. I don't know whether they've just literally gone through and think every single site's got to be done. I'm not even sure of which one's in their own or in which format, so that's like a little bit puzzling. So, but it does at least show there's the company who was doing them before with us, who kind of took some of the rebrands offers, ATS and I, off the page, and now they're coming back to us, which is really good. And it's just nice to know that the relationship ended in a position where we're still on the list of people who they trust to come to us for signage and graphics. And what they're doing is what we do is, you've got a company who does the shop fitting, so that's things like the tile and the painting, and then they come to us to actually understand and do the graphics for it. So yeah, all good. So interestingly enough, Wen had a little bit of time, so she logged on and watched or listened to one of these vlogs, and what did she say now? Just I'm a lot more tactful. I think I probably am definitely more tactful than Wen. It just underlines the difference, whereas I will be really, I think Wen was referring to when I was describing what the person was like who came to clean our last carpets, and let's just say that Wen would have described in a far more blunt, more colourful manner than maybe I would, and I suppose that's because you never know who's going to listen. Hopefully at some point or other, or it may well be grandkids or great grandkids or whatever. And do I want them to hear me cursing and slagging people off in a bad way? Or if, let's say, a client was watching this somehow or other, would I want people seeing me being like that? When, well, for a start, number one, 99% of the times that's not how I am. maybe behind closed doors, if it's me and Wend, I'll probably, you know, unleash the unfiltered version of myself, but certainly to when it's outside of that audience, then obviously I need to take that into consideration and you know, just present as if I was talking to a client or one of my sons or something along those lines. So anyway, Wednesday, so we discovered that we had a house viewing for the following Friday, and they've got I know it's for tomorrow, for the Thursday. So this is a couple who live on Kingsmead on a road, I think it's maybe called Knightsbridge Road or something along those lines, but apparently it's a road that houses tend to sell usually in about 2 or 3 weeks. It's a very popular place in Kingsmead to go. So they're not what I would classify in a position to buy, because obviously they haven't got the houses sold. So we've got all that was the next part of the pressure onwards after the original offer was obviously not acceptable. So that's good that, you know, people are now seeing the advert and interacting with it and asking for a booking. So that's good. We watched the Walking in the evening. I watched Walking Dead with Mac, which I enjoy. It's a series, a box series that we've watched together all the way through, and now we've kind of like caught up. So we watch them every week. When watched the box set with us right from the start, but I don't know, she's kind of like bored with the format or bored with the content, so she's now tends to be watching a phone or interacting on social or something along those lines, or basically not concentrating, then going almost like what's happening. So, you know, this goes back to this phrase, when you're in the room, be in the room. And when then decided obviously not to be in the room and go off and do something else, which is fine, she can do that. I'm going to watch it to the end. I'm really quite enjoying this current season. Wouldn't want to say any spoilers, but certainly there's a new form of enemy in terms of a group of people who they've come across, which is it's good. I like it. It's good. There's quite still a few jump scares, even though you know something bad's going to happen. You still don't know exactly why. So it's a little bit of jump scares, as in it just makes me jump. I don't know, I think I'm definitely more nervous when I'm watching it. It doesn't make Mac jump, but it definitely makes me jump. We discovered on the Wednesday that I think came up on Wen's Facebook timeline that it was the oldest dog that we got. It was her 6th birthday, so we added that onto my personal Outlook calendar, so I'll remember next time. We let her have as a treat we had some Cornish ice cream, which you're not really supposed to give dogs, but we checked to make sure there was no artificial sweeteners on there, which actually can be really poisonous to dogs if they have a sweetener, or maybe a muffin that's a low-calorie muffin that has, I think it begins with an X, it's called something Xynol or something like that. And if they eat that, or that's the main one, if they eat a piece of chewing gum, like a Wrigley's chewing gum or sugar-free chewing gum, that's really dangerous for them. That will probably kill a dog. So we checked anyway first, and she had that. Seemed to enjoy it, which it's her birthday, so why not? On Wednesday also got the Facebook. We started the Facebook ads running for We Deliver. We're running 2 in parallel this time, so we've got the animation running, which is an animation that Dan did, and it's spring themed, so it's vans, almost like a fleet of vans. You've got like a little van followed by a transit, followed by a long wheelbase, a sprinter, followed by a curtain-sided truck, as text comes on just saying we're a courier service, blah blah blah. And so we're running that parallel with the original ad that I shot which is let's say it's the 10% offer for new customers. So we'll see how they perform. So what we did this time, we changed the contextual part of it, which says the location, and it just says anywhere rather than picking up in Knutsford or Northwich or Cheshire or something like that. So we're running it now to say, now it's saying Cheshire, and what that means is we can pinpoint Northwich as a centre and then take the radius, rather than being like a tiny one to then being 7 kilometres round, and that takes into from here somewhere almost to the outskirts of Runcorn, which we can definitely service. But the good thing is now we can look to see how that compares against running it to say a particular smaller village, and see what the conversion's like in terms of do a like-for-like comparison on it. But the good thing about by going for that wider audience, you have a bigger pool of people to pick from, so that means you can actually go narrower. So instead of picking all business owners and specific big business titles in jobs like, for example, warehouse manager or logistics manager, or somebody who might be interested in a delivery company, whereas before we were actually also having to add in things like high net worth earners. So that would be people who may, for example, own companies, you'd like to think. We were able to exclude them from it and just literally go for ones that were by the kind of job title that they do. So we'll see how those ads. The great thing is now we've got data from the original set, and we can see how these ones perform differently and see whether the animation performed better than the live 10% off footage that I shot. The physiotherapy Facebook ad and the long form ad is getting to be to the point where it's nearer completion. Thursday was the day of the viewing of the lady the lady who lives on Kingsmead. So I worked at home, did a bit of work till breakfast, then I worked from home doing the cleaning, and every time we have a viewing, because of the dogs, the corner we have I don't know, can we call it a gazebo, an open gazebo, I think it's called maybe, but anyway, it's roofed, and it's got couches in there with a whole load of soft furnishings. And if we leave the soft furnishings there, we get things like I think there's like one of next door's cats comes and sits in it and covers it in cat fur. The dogs will tend to run over the soil at the back and then jump onto the cushions, leaving paw prints all over it. So in the interim, while the house is being viewed, I'm having to take, after pretty much every viewing, I'm having to take them back in and keep them dry and clean inside the dining room. And then there's obviously all the cleaning of the house that has to be done. And I have to say, I really find it quite stressful. Wen's pretty good at looking at things like the surface cleanliness. Does it look tidy? Are the cushions plumped up? Whereas I'm looking in more detail, going, is that clean? Is that clean? I really look at it with definitely more, with a lot more scrutiny of it. So it does make me feel edgy. My favourite tipple is whiskey or bourbon. We really say bourbon rather than whiskey, even though bourbon is like a Jack Daniels or something like that. And so I had I must admit I did have to have one. With that, what I'll tend to do is act as a depressant, or it just helps me relax and just be a bit more calm about things. So it does have, it's crazy how just 50 millilitres of one particular fluid would leaves you just reprograms your mindset, whether that be psychosomatic or not. At the end of the day, if it works and it makes me more relaxed and less stops me getting stressy about things, then I think it's justifiable. it was raining because Thursday the weather was bad. We had the dogs in, so the plan would be normally to take the dogs out for a walk, and that kind of kills a bit of time. I tried to take the dogs out of the walk, but it was absolutely hammered with rain, so the dogs weren't particularly liking it. When they'd driven off to wait further up the road to just see what the person was like, maybe just gauge see what car they were, see what insights you could gain on it. So after walking around for like 5-10 minutes or something along those lines without seeing anybody just drive up, I thought we could be waiting here all day long. So I got in the car with the dogs as well, just to dry off. We drove past and we could see that I think they must have struggled to find. The lady was running a bit late. I think that's what it was. Couldn't find the house, and just had quite a nice car. I think it might have been maybe an Astra or something along those lines. So she had a walk around, the feedback was that it was all very positive, and that she wanted to talk to her husband about it. So obviously I have to see how that goes. Went back into work in the afternoon after the viewing being done, had some lunch, went back in, helped. Jess was off, so I ended up helping Dan Lloyd with some of the M&S schemes. We're doing one for Edinburgh at the moment, so it was bizarre because I was showing him some of the techniques and going off instructions that are written for myself, but I hadn't actually done a scheme in maybe 18 months or something along those lines, possibly longer. So it was as much new to, felt almost like it felt like new to me. I was like, oh, how'd you do this and how'd you do that? And I couldn't. Sometimes you just have to just follow the instructions and just trust that they are right. And sure enough, it did work in terms of how the document's put together in a very particular way. There's maybe a 15-step process that you have to repeat for every time you drop an image in, just to make sure that the presentation document that we do for each scheme is done in scale. So if you look at an A4 piece of paper, that 1 centimetre is the equivalent of always the exact same scale, or I don't know, let's say it's 1 centimetre is 1,533 millimetres or something like that. But there's just a way of doing it. If you handle the files in a particular way and follow this particular step, then you can get it to be super accurate. So that was good. In the evening, I was watching the latest Star Trek Discovery with the boys, as in when was out with yoga. Wen really enjoys yoga. I mean, she's been doing a lot of things of an evening. She's tried Pilates, just things that are just going to try and help her back. But I think the yoga one's quite interesting because there's a point within the yoga where you're doing meditation as well, and I think that had released, I don't know, maybe tensions or whatever, but like when they got quite emotional, I think, over it. So it obviously must be, she's definitely immersing herself and getting right into it, and I think that's a really good thing. When needs all help at the moment. It's not easy for her. She's 49, she'll be 49 this year, so it's that time of life where she's going through changes in her body and her physiology in terms of her hormones and what have you, all over the shop, and it just, it's not a nice time for her there at the minute. Definitely. So I think anything that helps, whether it be getting your mind right or relaxing or helping her back, which is obviously in a worse state, the spine's collapsed at the back, so if you can manage that without having the risk of an operation which could leave her in a worse position, then then I'm all for it. I'd even consider probably doing something like that myself. But I think again, sometimes as a couple we work together, which is crazy in one thing. But if we then come home and then together, and then we're then going to things like yoga together as well, then I don't know. I think you do need a little bit of time apart. Friday we had was a day that we were going down to visit our ex-next door neighbours. So popped into work early in the morning to have I put down a strategy meeting here. I can't think what it was. I can't think what it must have been one for Wend. Maybe talking about the future of how the Wend's side of the business or department, whatever you want to call it, works. Kat, who worked for us, Kat Hooker, who does a podcast, had the sponsorship money that we'd given to her come through, so she's been just thanking us for that on her social channels and what have you. So that's really good, something she deserves. Fully supportive of her and her friend for what they're doing for people. It's actually making it. It's interesting when you listen to the podcast and you're hearing now there are people across the world who are hearing it, which is great. And if that's helping people, then that's something she should be incredibly proud of, I think. Although I do worry about having her taking, certainly the last podcast that I listened to was from a lady from, I think it might have been Venezuela or somewhere like that. And then she then moved to the USA, and it was definitely a lot heavier. I think all the ones that I've been through maybe related to a social group seemed to be a little bit more light-hearted, but this one was certainly seemed like you're listening to somebody on a psychiatrist's couch, and it's like, wow, man, this is really heavy stuff. So I think you need to be in a position where you can absorb all these things, or maybe learn to detach yourself from them if you're doing it. So yeah, that's a crazy thing. Friday then we also had a second viewing, which was by the people who were from the lady who then actually had a husband down, and they wanted it at short notice. So then it was like, right, we're going. So we ended up having to leave the key out to so that the estate agent could take them in, show them both around. So we had to rush around, putting, for example, cushions back in the garden room, if that's what you would call it. And obviously not really the ideal setup for when you're prepping to go down to do a visit. Wend, of our friends, Wend kindly decided to drive down, which allowed me a little bit more time to log on to my laptop and keep on top of my emails to a little bit of degree. I had some costings to do for a KFC scheme, so I did that as well. So we got to see our friends who now live in the Cotswold in a village called Bampton, which is really lovely, very scenic. Bricks all around here, around Cheshire, all the bricks are like a reddy colour. Some of the bricks are darker, with the black, have almost like a burnt look to them, and that's how a lot of the bricks are around here. When you go down to the Cotswolds, it's more of the stone has, I don't know, it must be called Cotswold stone, I would guess, but it's got a gold appearance. So all it was very pretty, really, really pretty down there. Dave and Carl, they really are just really a great couple, despite the fact, he's running a company that's, that's making a six-figure, maybe clearly a six-figure summit. No, sorry, maybe a seven-figure sum in terms of profits each year. So they're on a completely different, and he's the MD of it, and also now he owns it. There was a management buyout, I think maybe last year or the year before. So literally they are on a completely different financial playing fields, but it hasn't changed them as people. They're still true to themselves, I would say. They just obviously just have like nicer things. So when you go to their house, it's like I suppose it's like a show house. That's probably the easiest way, or maybe an incredibly high like quality, like a 5-star hotel or something along those lines. But it's so well put together inside. All the furnishing's lovely. Everything's new. It's a new house, new build. But I think even if it was an old house, everything could be new, and it would all be really well put together, and just so caring and attentive to the guests. I mean, where else could you go where you would have a pile of towels and of different sizes in a face cloth, and then you'd also have some of those like slippers that are cellophane sealed, which is such a caring attention to detail, just like mind-boggling. So we went out after getting there, we went out to a couple of local pubs, one called the Romany, I think it was called, another one called the Morris Clown. Had a couple of pints there. I don't normally drink, pints tend to be more of a short drinker, but we did that to, I don't know, Dave drinks pints, so it's kind of like seems to be the right thing to do. Came back when David put some food on in the oven, and so we've been out, just for a couple of quick drinks before coming back. We sat down, had a lovely meal. Although you could call it was maybe Dave's famed for being an amazing cook. On this particular one, they got. You can call it a ready meal, but it's a ready meal that's made by a company called Cook, and if you've ever had the pleasure of having their stuff, it's all really nice cookies. Cookies like having a pre-prepared meal that you've cooked yourself. That's probably the easiest way of almost like reheating something that's been cooked feels like it's been cooked by a chef, but it's really, really nice quality. We had such a good laugh. Tried to, I think before I'd left on my laptop, I'd loaded up some files on Wits End. Not all of them had copied across, so then whilst this is after I'd had a number of pints, probably the equivalent of a bottle of red wine, which again I don't drink whatsoever. I'd started to feel the pace in terms of from an alcohol point of view. So apparently after I'd really struggled, I'd been trying to copy these files over in I'd literally tried to copy and paste 1.7 gigs worth of files from the PC at home onto the laptop, which obviously shows how much I'd had to drink, because that was never going to work ever, or it was going to take forever. So I think I just literally had given up and just gone to bed, which is really, I don't know, I feel really bad about it now in retrospect. I think David, it must have been about, I don't know, maybe 1:30, getting on for 2 o'clock that I'd turned in. I think Carl had followed on shortly afterwards, and then David stayed up till around 3 o'clock tidying around the house, tidying up all the mess that we'd made, because we'd had, I don't know, like starters and mains and drinks, and there was all that tidying up to do. So he really is such a good, genuine guy. Saturday, I woke up probably about 9:30, 10. Yeah, obviously had a bit of a hangover. The other thing that was interesting was that the room that we're in had blinds on for the windows, and it was really bright. So I think I'd been sleeping with my arm across to try and block out the light, because I like sleeping in really dark rooms. So that makes me think again. I'm like drilling down. I was thinking, well, how's that going to work at Wits End? How we've got like a porthole window set in the main bedroom. You've got a porthole window. You've got a Juliet balcony with obviously like full length doors. And it's like, well, you know, how on earth I'm going to find a way to block out all that kind of level of light that's coming in. So I don't know, not even a clue how that's even going to start. Went down. I had when was getting ready after I'd had a shower and what have you. Went down, had a lovely breakfast. I mean, it's kind of, obviously Dave's like, oh, would you like some toast? And toast is not like a bread from a toast. It's like hand cut loaf, granary loaf. You know, just everything's just that little bit nicer, and yeah, it was just good. Just chatted away. I was telling him about the vlog that I was doing. Talked about TikTok, how things going on at work. Just obviously just waiting for Wen to come down. When came down, then we went out for a drive. Dave drove us around some of the local villages. I think Burford was one through. We stopped at the local church, a local village and church where all the Downton Abbey is filmed. So I don't watch Downton Abbey, but when you've seen it, and you actually have around the village, I think it's almost got like a Downton Abbey trail and shows who's at the houses in the village, which house they are in terms of who lives in that house on the television, which I miss, but you know, stunning village. We went to another village called Broadway. Had a look at, there was a number of shops that were in there in terms of interior design shops and what have you, with some amazing stunning pieces. When did fallen in love with what, I don't know, let's call it a chaise longue, or it's a zero gravity chair. So a chaise longue is like a long chair with a back on it, whereas a zero gravity chair is maybe, it doesn't have the side on it, goes up in like a Z or something like that, or whatever. So kind of like you've got a bit for your head, a bit for your back, then up for your knees and then down to your feet. And the lady's like, oh, this is a one of a kind, I think, was it Icelandic sheep, like long fur, grey fur on it. She said, oh yeah, it's a one of a kind, only one piece that's going to be made like that. It was £2,500. Mum was like, I want it. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. We're at the moment, this whole Wits End thing and the business and what have you, it's just literally taking us to the point of almost like going back to zero. It really is going to clean us out, and that's before we even look at doing things like building or renovations or any tweaks that need to be made. So the last thing I want to be doing is spending £2,500 on a statement piece of furniture. But we went round, I think there's another one called Oka, is it OKA maybe, something like that. There's one of them in Knutsford, but I haven't been to it. It's an interior design place. All, you know, again, the kind of places that Dave and Carl will probably frequent and literally buy things from. I mean, they were looking, I think they were looking for a tray maybe to go on. They've got a very large footstool or something like that, looking for a tray, and I think the trays alone were maybe a couple of £100 or something along those lines. And I'll say one thing for Wend, she knows how to look out, knows how to get things that look good value, let's say good value for money, so they maybe look a lot more expensive than what they are. She's got really good taste for that. So although the Icelandic chaise longue was maybe not, and I wouldn't class that as good value, but it was certainly some one-off pieces. Took some pictures. They had some individual chairs that had been made, let's say armchairs, but the armchairs were made up to, they had like a suit and tie on them, that kind of thing, or like military ones, some like really spectacular one-off pieces. Really enjoyed that. Nice spoke to the manager as well. She was very, very nice in terms of just talking about pieces. Yeah, it was good. We went to, had a nice, I think it was a little bar. We had a restaurant, cafe, whatever you want to call it, called Number 32. Had some nice lunch there. Then we went to around Whitney, and then we went to a pub called the Swan Hotel at Minster Lovell. Again, really beautiful. So you go into the hotel and you walk down, and you've got a glass floor in it, and it's a well, an ancient well that you can illuminated, you can see down into. It was like a spa hotel. Yeah, very, very pretty. You're next to a village green where they're already, this is what we're in March, and they're out there mowing the lawn for the village cricket green. Got a lovely little stream running by it, literally picture postcard in terms of it's beautiful. We went through Stowe. There's another famous place, Stowe on the Wall. Again, that's supposed to be one of the most beautiful villages in the country. So again, just like as I say, just really, really nice. Came back, got changed. That was an interesting thing as well. We were talking about that Cal can't find places to get a car wash in terms of like a hand wash. And then we pulled over at a petrol station, and there was one there. So if this is kind of like an indication between Cheshire, which isn't exactly renowned, the county that we live in. It's, where we go to the hand car washes for a van or like a 4x4, then it's like I tended to get washed, and down there it was 15 quid or something like that, so it's 50% more expensive even just to get your car washed down there, which just goes to show the difference in the cost of living, the difference between Cheshire and the Cotswolds or Oxford, I think, is really that's really, it's within that kind of commuter zone, and a massive difference. Went out to, I think it's called the Lost Plough in Clanfield for an evening meal. That was a great meal. They're a specialist gin pub, so they've actually got a gin pantry, which is a walk-in cupboard, and it's just wall to wall, maybe 5 shelves deep of just all different kinds of gins. And then you've got a gin expert who will then ask you the kind of things that you like and select a gin for you. So I don't really drink gin, didn't fancy a pint, because if I was going to be drinking, then that was going to fill me up gassed. So I just had a few, what did I have now? Gin and Jameson's. They didn't even have any Jack Daniels, but he said that that they would have, there's some kind of gin that you can get, I didn't get the name of it, but it's made in whiskey vats, or matured in whiskey vats, whatever you want to call it. A whiskey gin, maybe, I think that's what they called it. So I had one of those as like a nightcap, which was, it was nice. Obviously most people have gin with some kind of tonic, but on that particular one I had it neat. So yeah, it was, I don't know if I'd go out there and buy it, but it definitely tasted less. It didn't have the same kind of flavours that a gin has. Gin has sometimes maybe like a little bit of a herby taste to me, or a taste that I don't know. I'm not used to it anyway. It's not the kind of thing that I would drink neat. But yeah, it was nice. We came back to Dave and Carl's, and I'd requested them the previous night to dig out their wedding video that they'd been married in since 1989, and it was just great watching that. The person who'd done it, I think, was a friend who'd offered to film it for them, and he'd gone and hired the video camera, I think, from a company called Rumbelows, and it was more like a gigantic camera that you put on your shoulder. But it was good. He hadn't, I think it was the first time he'd used it, so he hadn't really got the the knack of focusing, so the majority of it was out of focus, but you could still see. And again, I think this kind of like underlines the vlogging, looking back and seeing what the younger version of yourself, obviously I'm not that young, but a younger version of yourself, what they look back and how they were, because they've changed. Changed in some ways, changed a lot in other ways. They're still the same couple who they were back in 30 years ago, which is great, and hats off to them. 30 years of marriage. There's some people who don't even make 30 weeks of marriage, let alone 30 years. So, and what they've achieved as well, amazing. They've gone from, let's say a 2 up, 2 down to, a 5-bed one in the Cotswolds, and who knows, with an incredibly not lavish, but certainly an amazing standard of living that other people I can only dream of aspiring to, but still be just genuinely nice people, which is great. So yeah, we watched the video of Wits End. That was good to see their take on it. I think you can guarantee them to be honest on these kind of things, and I think they said the same thing. It's nice kitchen and what have you, but certainly it's a project. I think that probably sums it up bang on the money for me. Sunday was up about 8:30 again due to the light, a nice bright way of waking, but it is a natural way of waking by natural light. I hadn't drunk as much that night, and obviously had a meal, so definitely felt a bit better. Dave made an amazing 4-cup breakfast with like local, I think it's from the Bampton. They've got like a butcher's in Bampton where the sausages they make are award-winning, often had by a lot of the local kind of like gastro pubs and what have you. Award-winning bacon, just lovely. We sat down and watched the Liverpool. Before we left, I was going to leave, but Dave there was the Liverpool-Burnley game on. Burnley actually got the first goal, which is like, oh my. It doesn't bode well, because with the title race being so tight, Liverpool had to win. Good game, and a bit edgy at times. Liverpool actually won it 4-2 in the end, so that's good. And now a point behind Man City, and they get to play the next game first. So in theory, they could go first, and Man City then have to play catch up after that. But then I think all the remaining games, Man City are always playing either at the same time or before Liverpool going forward. So I don't know what that means in terms of psychology, but there's only further 8 games to play, so it really is an exciting title race. Obviously, fingers crossed would be amazing for Liverpool to win for me, because I never thought. It never seems to be their year, although we're definitely getting closer under the management of Jurgen Klopp. Amazing manager, I think. Drove home. I drove home. One was pretty tired. Doesn't sleep so well, obviously, all the time with the back and what have you. Got a call from the estate agents on the way back and said, okay, we've got another viewing, I think for Tuesday midday of this week coming. The lady on this particular one is sold a house subject to contract, and the house is up for, I think it's about £800,000 or something like that. So she's looking to downsize, lives in Bostock Hall, I think it is, which is a village not far from here, so obviously it must still be local for her. When I drove around some of the estate and had a look, some of the houses are pretty similar-ish in terms of look and feel. This is probably probably like a similar style, I suppose. Beautiful setting though, that Bostock Hall. You've got like a hall, and you've got a number of individual residences where people are in there, and it's kind of like a gated community feel. Yeah, really nice. Yeah, really nice. So later on, you know, we're looking forward to what's happening this weekend. We've got a funeral to go to today on the Monday, and I was talking to my parents on the way home. They were asking how old. It's Helen's dad who's died. That's like one of Wen's best friends, probably Wen's best friend, I suppose. And he died. He's 80 years old, and my parents were asking him, going, "Well, how old was he?" And he said 80, and she was like, "Oh right," because obviously, well, my parents are 80 and something like 82 respectively, or something along those lines. And they were like, "Yeah, you know, it's." I think there comes to I think when you're getting towards 50 is when you start becoming a lot more aware of your own mortality, as more and more people die around you, stars who you've maybe watched where you were growing up, and then, you know, dying and what have you. I know certainly from Cat's podcast, lots of the parents on that seem to die at 49, which is a bit eerie, bearing in mind I'll be 49 this year. But when you frame it, and this is what I said to Wendy, if you think, okay, so you might go, 80, that doesn't seem very far off, but then if you reverse it back the other way and you take 30 years off our age now, and that takes me back to 19, I think, well, you know, what was I doing when I was 19? What was Wen doing when you were 19? You know, what had you achieved at that particular point in life? And then you look at the distance between then and now, and I think that really does help put what a 30-year span looks like. I mean, if you look at the changes that have happened even since we've been running the business for the past 7 years, which feels like a lifetime, you know, and what's been achieved in that period of time. So again, I think having that kind of perspective on it certainly helps. I think this week coming forward as well is going to be a major week for the country, because there are I think there's maybe about 5 votes that are key to the Brexit, where what kind of Brexit we have, whether the deal goes through, with the deal that May's agreed, whether her deal goes through or not, or whether it be a Brexit without no deal, or whether it goes to an extension. I think I'm going to probably guess for that they're going to vote for an extension to the deal. You know, that they're just going to try and put it off, but you know, it could be a vote of no confidence in the government. It's just hard to know what's going to happen at all. Interestingly, I think Dave was probably in favour of Brexit in terms of still being in a customs union, but to have some kind of control over our stuff. But I don't even think even now, Dave's seeing the way things are happening, it's having an impact on their business, where they're getting the raw materials over from the continent. There's people who are already like block booking ferries already are booked up, just because people are, I'm not saying panicking, I suppose it is, they're just preparing to make sure that they can get all their goods over before anybody else is. So I think that's going to be the worst thing of it. I think it'll just be the panic that ensues, and I would imagine there's going to be bare shelves for a lot of commodities as people stock up and panic and what have you. Whereas if they were just treated things normally, I think things would probably carry on as normal. But I think panic mentality and siege mentality is going to set in soon enough. So yeah, this week is going to be a really interesting week, and fingers crossed the lady who's coming looking at ours on Tuesday, let's hope that she makes a sensible offer. And surely if she's trading down, it's unlikely to going to be I would have thought, you'd like to think that it's going to be an offer that's going to be what we're looking for. So we'll see how that goes. So till next week, thank you.